Hello, everyone. Today, we delve into two fundamental concepts in linguistic meaning, presupposition and entailment. These concepts explore the hidden assumptions and logical consequences that shape how we communicate, not just in everyday conversation but in professional context as well. On this slide, you'll see two powerful analogies. On the left, for presupposition, we have an iceberg. The visible tip of the iceberg represents what is explicitly said, for instance, the sentence, "John stopped smoking." However, the vast, unseen mass below the water represents what is assumed, the background knowledge that the speaker believes the listener already possesses. In this case, the unspoken assumption is that John used to smoke. On the right, we have a chain representing entailment. This illustrates a purely logical relationship. If the first statement, the first link in the chain, is true, Buster is a dog, it logically and necessarily entails the truth of the next statement, Buster is a mammal. One truth guarantees the other. A crucial tool we'll use to distinguish them is the negation test. As you can see, a presupposition survives negation. If we say, John did not stop smoking, the assumption that he used to smoke remains true. In contrast, an entailment is cancelled by negation. This test will be central to our discussion today. To further clarify this distinction, let's use the analogy of a house. Think of entailment as the physical structure of the house itself, the walls, the roof, the doors. If I say, the house is green, this statement logically entails that a house exists. The existence of the house is a direct, logical consequence of the statement. Presupposition, on the other hand, is the unseen foundation the house is built upon. It's the assumed reality that makes the statement possible. If I say, the house is still standing, I am presupposing a shared understanding that the house was standing before. Look at the examples here. The sentence, my new car is a convertible logically entails that I have a car. But it presupposes that I have something new. If we negate the sentence to, my new car is not a convertible, the entailment that I have a convertible is cancelled, but the presupposition that I have a new car can still survive. Throughout this lecture, we have 5 key learning objectives. First, we will define presupposition and entailment, establishing a solid conceptual foundation. Second, we will learn to distinguish between these two concepts, primarily by applying the negation test to identify their different behaviors. Third, we will analyze presupposition triggers, the specific words and grammatical structures that create these hidden assumptions. Fourth, we will identify the role of shared knowledge, understanding how our common background enables presuppositions to function effectively in communication. Finally, we will learn to apply these concepts professionally, recognizing how presupposition analysis is a valuable tool in business, law, and other formal settings. So, let's begin with a formal definition. What is a presupposition? A presupposition is an implicit assumption that a speaker makes, believing the listener will accept it as true without challenge. It is background information taken for granted, assumed to be part of the common ground of a conversation before the main point is even made. Consider our example, one stopped smoking. The main idea, or the asserted content, is that one is no longer smoking. However, the hidden assumption, the presupposition, is that one was smoking before. This presupposition is activated by the verb stopped, which is what we call a presupposition trigger. By using such triggers, speakers can convey information efficiently and implicitly, allowing conversations to proceed smoothly without stating every single background detail. Now, let's turn to entailment. Unlike presupposition, entailment is a strictly logical relationship between sentences, where the truth of one sentence guarantees the truth of another. It is based entirely on the literal, semantic meaning of the words and is independent of context or a speaker's assumptions. Let's analyze the sentence, the teacher arrested 2 students. If this sentence is true, several other sentences must also be true. These are its entailments. Entailment 1, a teacher arrested someone. Entailment 2, someone arrested 2 students. Entailment 3, 2 students were arrested. If the original sentence is true, all of these entailments are undeniably true. Entailment is a property of the sentence itself. It is a one-way, logical relationship that holds regardless of the speaker's intentions. To summarize the core distinction in a single statement, entailment is a logical consequence of what is said. Presupposition is an assumed foundation of what is said. One flows logically from the statement, like a conclusion from a premise. The other exists before the statement is even uttered, serving as the ground upon which the statement makes sense. As I mentioned earlier, the most reliable method for distinguishing between presupposition and entailment is the negation test. The procedure involves negating a sentence and observing whether the related statement remains true. The rule is simple and powerful: a presupposition remains true or constant even when the main sentence is negated. An entailment does not; it is cancelled by negation. This simple test beautifully isolates a speaker's underlying assumption from a sentence's direct logical meaning. Let's walk through an example of applying the negation test to a presupposition. Original sentence: the dean's brother is a lawyer. This sentence has a main idea: the brother is a lawyer. It also has a presupposition, triggered by the definite description: the dean's brother, the dean has a brother. Now, let's form the negative sentence: the dean's brother is not a lawyer. The main idea is now false. However, the presupposition, that the dean has a brother, still holds true. Whether he's a lawyer or not doesn't change our assumption about his existence. The key insight here is that the presupposition survives negation. This is the definitive characteristic of presuppositional meaning. Now, let's contrast this by applying the test to an entailment. Original sentence: the new professor is a man. This logically entails the statement: the new professor is a person. Now for the negative sentence: the new professor is not a man. The original statement is now false. The entailment is cancelled. The new professor may be a woman or identified differently, so the original sentence no longer guarantees the entailment in the same logical way. Here, the key insight is that presuppositions are constant under negation, while entailments are not. This is the fundamental difference. Presuppositions don't occur randomly. They are reliably prompted by specific words and grammatical structures known as presupposition triggers. Understanding these triggers allows you to actively identify hidden assumptions in communication. Let's explore some of the most common types. Here are 4 common categories of presupposition triggers. Factive verbs: these are verbs like regret, realize, and know, which presuppose the truth of the clause that follows them. For example, I regret telling him presupposes that I told him. Change of state verbs: verbs like stop, start, continue, or begin presuppose a prior state. She stopped talking presupposes that she was talking before. Definite descriptions: these are noun phrases starting with the or a possessive pronoun like my, your, or her. My car is broken presupposes I have a car. The new dean is here presupposes there is a new dean. Structural triggers: the grammatical structure of a sentence itself can trigger a presupposition, especially WH questions. For example, where did you find your book presupposes you found your book somewhere. For presuppositions to work effectively, they rely on shared knowledge, or common ground, between the speaker and the listener. A speaker makes a presupposition based on what they believe is shared background information. The listener then interprets the utterance against this assumed background. This shared context is what enables smooth, efficient communication. When this knowledge isn't actually shared, misunderstandings can arise. But what happens when the listener doesn't already possess the presupposed information? This is where a fascinating cognitive process called accommodation comes into play. Accommodation is the process where a listener, encountering a new presupposition, quietly adds that information to their background knowledge to make sense of the conversation and allow it to continue. For example, if I say to a new acquaintance, my car is broken, they probably don't know I have a car. But instead of stopping me, they will likely accommodate the presupposition, Alex has a car, and respond to the main point. This cooperative process allows communication to flow even when shared knowledge isn't perfect. Understanding presupposition is not merely an academic exercise, it's a critical skill in professional communication. Presuppositions can be used, intentionally or not, to persuade, frame arguments, and even manipulate conversations. Let's examine how awareness of them can make you a more effective and critical communicator in various professional contexts. Politics and public speaking are arenas where presuppositions are frequently used for strategic effect. Consider the classic loaded question, when did you stop supporting our city's development? The hidden presupposition, this question presupposes that the person did support the development in the past and has since stopped, regardless of whether that is true. The strategic effect, it's a rhetorical trap. By attempting to answer the when part of the question, the respondent implicitly accepts the hidden assumption, thereby framing the debate on the speaker's terms. Speakers use this to make the audience accept a premise without question. Advertising is another field that masterfully employs presuppositions to influence consumer perception. Take the tagline, "Discover the best coffee in the world." The verb discover presupposes that this coffee is the best in the world. Its status as the best is presented as an existing fact waiting to be found. This is a subtle persuasion tactic. It avoids a direct, challengeable claim like, "Our coffee is the best," instead embedding the idea as an unquestioned truth, making the consumer more likely to believe it without demanding proof. In legal and business negotiations, presuppositions can be used to create tactical advantages. Management scenario, a manager might say, "Since you have already decided on the project, let's talk about the timeline." The presupposition here is that the decision has already been made. This can pressure an employee to move on without voicing potential objections to the project itself. Negotiation scenario, a negotiator might state, "Before we finalize the agreement, let's look at the financial details." This presupposes that the agreement is nearly final, creating a sense of momentum that may not have been mutually confirmed, subtly giving that party an edge. So, how can we leverage this knowledge? By becoming more critical communicators. This involves 4 key actions. Identify hidden assumptions, train yourself to listen for what is being taken for granted, not just what is being explicitly stated. Question underlying assumptions, politely challenge presuppositions that may be inaccurate. Let's quickly review the key takeaways from our discussion. Presupposition versus entailment. Presuppositions are assumed foundations that survive negation. Entailments are logical consequences that are cancelled by negation. The negation test, this is your go-to tool for distinguishing between the two. Presupposition triggers, be mindful of factive verbs, change of state verbs, and definite descriptions as they create these assumptions. Shared knowledge, remember that presuppositions function based on the common ground between communicators. Professional applications, presuppositions are powerful tools in persuasion, advertising, and negotiation. Critical awareness, finally, recognizing presuppositions is essential to becoming a more careful and effective communicator. In conclusion, by learning to master these hidden meanings, to identify presuppositions and distinguish them from entailments, you equip yourself to be a more precise, aware, and effective communicator. You can now recognize what information is being taken for granted versus what is a necessary logical consequence of words. I encourage you to use this knowledge to communicate with greater precision, persuade with ethical awareness, and engage with critical thinking in all of your professional and personal interactions. Thank you. I would now be happy to answer any questions you may have. Please log into our course website at www.ELS213.com and post your questions. Also, the quiz for this module is already open.